Are you ready for a reboot? Welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. History reminds us those hit hardest often become the change makers. This year, we've all hit crazy economic, social, and emotional rock bottoms. We all get knocked down. Something hits globally, locally, personally. It affects our health, finances, our relationships. We have to recreate a business or career. Each show, Sheila and her special guest will be sharing their reboot stories, guiding you with real solutions to upgrade and up-level emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. Here on NBC's KCAA Radio, Mondays at 1 and Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Pacific Time. If you're ready to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and bra straps, enjoy a listen. Here's Sheila.
Welcome to NBC Sheila Mack Show. I am your host, Sheila Mack, and I want to give a special thank you shout out to Podcorn for sponsoring this episode. And my personal experience with Podcorn was a while back. A friend of mine actually told me about this incredible program where it helps you find sponsors that are aligned for your show. So for me, that was very important because the values of this show make all the difference, and I want to make sure that everything is aligned with what I am doing. And so that made a huge difference in being able to find the proper sponsors for my show. Now, let me tell you just a bit more about Podcorn. Podcorn is a marketplace connecting podcasters to amazing podcast sponsorship opportunities such as host read ads, interview segments, topical discussions, and more. With Podcorn, there's no middleman, so podcasters of all sizes, different shows can browse and choose opportunities right on the platform. Then you set your own rates and collaborate with brands directly without any exclusivity. You never give up your rights to your podcast or show, and Podcorn is there to support you at every step and ensure you're protected and compensated for the work that you do for the brands. The marketplace mission is to give podcasters transparency, creative freedom, and full control of how we as podcasters and show hosts monetize. So if you would like to connect with them, check out their website. And their website is Podcorn, Podcorn.com. Podcorn. All right. Now let's get this show started. Welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. Here we have real people sharing real stories and actionable steps to help you reinvent, rebuild, and reboot your business and personal life on your terms. I'm your host, Sheila Mack, and today we have Kate Pennington. Kate is a passionate child educator and advocate for ostracized children. She's the author who discusses what drives her to create a kinder, more inclusive society through her children's books and charity, Bullying and Beyond A Joke Ltd. Her autobiography shows her life story and how it led her to create a legacy that helps others. She was severely bullied in the workplace, losing everything and becoming homeless on the street. It was then that she walked with no purpose, contemplating suicide at one point, and then she began to write her story that led her to writing children's books. Wow. So she has written a series of children's books called the Beyond A Joke series. They focus on the importance of compassion and kindness and aim to stop aggression and bullying. So important. And she wrote these books because she wanted to leave a legacy and build a safe haven for children. All right. Welcome to the show, Kate.
Thank you, Sheila. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. The first thing I always like to ask is, based on my new best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. That's actually how this show got started, is through that book and some introductions. And so I like to ask if you could share with the audience maybe a time where you hit the tough situation in your life or business and how you got back on track.
Okay, I had two very bad bouts of bullying. The first bout, I became agoraphobic. I was prescribed Xanax so I could go to work because I was so nervous and anxiety ridden. Unfortunately, I became addicted, ended up in detox. Then once I was home, I became so agoraphobic I couldn't go out of the house for 12 months. How I got out of that was a lot of meditation, exercising, having conversations with myself in the mirror, anything I could think of. And then all of a sudden, I was back out there. So I started to study community welfare and childcare. And then everything was going great. My second bout of bullying, which was my worst, unfortunately, I was a target and the entertainment for a lot of managers.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up with a broken bone in my foot because they thought it was funny to make me lift heavy items and so forth in high heel shoes and suits. And long story short, with the depression and the anxiety, as well as the broken bone in the foot, I lost my job, I lost my home, and I became homeless because there was nowhere I could go to help me with my rent and that sort of thing. So all my beautiful clothes and furnishings went to charity or just went out to the tip.
Mm.
And so I left the home I had for 4 years with a backpack on my back and walked the streets in an orthopedic boot. It was then that I realised, okay, I've got no purpose, no reason to live anymore. And I decided, I used to look at the cliff I was going to jump off at Manly Beach. And as soon as I got out of the orthopedic boot, I was able to climb up there. But then something snapped and said, fight back, help others.
Yeah.
And from there, I started to write my stories in Australian verse because that was the only way I could get it out. I couldn't write it seriously like a diary.
Mm-hmm.
So I did it in Australian verse in a creative way. And that was my first book that I ever wrote. And from there, I just decided that I was going to help others. And I just said to God, okay, get me out of this, get me out of the gutter. And I promised to dedicate my life to others. So that's what I've been doing for the last few years. I managed to get different pieces of jobs. I started a little business as a sole trader, then as a not-for-profit, and then as a registered charity, and now as a charity but Australia-wide. So I can help build safe havens Australia-wide. I didn't know I could write until this all happened to me. And then I started to write children's books because I was seeing on the news and media that children as young as 8 years old were committing suicide due to bullying. So my books actually target that age group. And I'm just going to hold a couple up if that's okay. I've got Amelia and Camellia make a great team.
Mm-hmm.
Now, these are about inclusion, kindness, anti-bullying. So Amelia is a normal fairy penguin. She has an accident down at Manly Wharf, ends up in a wheelchair, and it teaches children it doesn't matter if anyone's got a disability, they're still human. And Amelia, the fairy penguin, is used to it. It's her legs now. And at the back of each book, they're beautifully illustrated by an artist that I met on Gumtree, Croatian girl.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just gorgeous illustrations.
Mm.
And in the back is a summary of each book, and then there's questions for discussions within the classroom and that type of thing. So, and most of my characters do have a disability.
Mm-hmm.
I've got Susie Strauss. She is born deaf, ends up with a cochlear implant, but she's teased and bullied. And there's a range of them. I have Wilhelmina Wombat. She has an eating disorder. Mm-hmm. So they're all about impacts of bullying and what they can do to children. And that's how I've come back from everything that I went through. And I did put it in my memoirs, which I've just finished. And I've called that Bullied, but now Beyond. And it shows how far I went down, and then all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, but over the years, I finally built myself up, and I'm building a legacy so that when I'm gone, my work will continue to help others for many decades.
Yes. Yes, I often wonder why it is that children can be so cruel. And I kind of got to the point. I have 6 children. I actually fostered 2, adopted 3, and 3 birth children, and they're all grown now. And I remember wondering where do these other kids, how do they become bullies? Where does this come from? And a lot of the times the bullies are actually bullied at home.
Yeah.
Could be from a parent, a sibling, there's abuse, there's something not right, obviously, to cause a child to be cruel to another child. And I would often see maybe the parents of the kids that weren't nice, let's say, that bullied and picked on the other kids or whatever. The parents were like that in the mom groups. That I was like, oh, wait, I bet I know whose mom that is. And it always was right. And so it's so important to set the right example at home, and also to look at both sides, and the children that are being bullied, and how to heal even the children that are bullying and stop that, so that they can learn how to be better adults, better people, and not do such a terrible act. I don't think they realize at that young age how much they can harm another young person that's so impressionable.
That's right. And with the centre that I'm opening up in March, we do have a workshop, because I think if we don't acknowledge that children that bully may be bullied themselves, so there is workshops for them to help them along as well. There's counsellors there and so forth to find out what's going on. Why do you feel like you have to tease, bully, hurt another human being? So we don't want to just put a label on someone and say, off you go, you're just a bully. We want to actually help them as well. So we have a variety of different workshops for different people. So
that sounds wonderful. And I'd love to hear a little bit about some of the books. You shared somewhat about them, but I'd love to hear, like, did you have a character or a friend or someone you knew in your life that went through those particular situations, a disability or eating disorder, or one of the other ones, the hearing one that ended up with an implant? How did you come to these stories?
Okay, so I've chosen to use Australian animals as the characters, because I thought that's more fun for the children. And so I've got Ruby Redback Spider, teaches kindness at school, so she's a school teacher and so forth. But yes, they come from factual stories. So parents would write to me on Facebook about their child being bullied, and I would write an empowering, personalised story for that child. And they were really successful. It was just a little community service that I did just for the children. But yes, Susie Strauss, that is a true story of a friend that I had, and she was born deaf and had the cochlear implant when she was in primary school. And of course children didn't understand, and she was being hit in the head. I don't know why, but for some reason they just thought it was fun to hit her in the head after her operation at school. So even though the book doesn't go into that awful detail, I have got I think I've got a cockroach in there and a witchetty grub and so forth that tease Susie Strauss because she's deaf. So it shows children how sad it made her because she couldn't hear. Wilhelmina Wombat, yes, that was another one. A parent wrote to me, her 12-year-old son used to wear big floppy jumpers even in the Australian summer because he felt like his stomach was too big. So he wouldn't take off his shirt and had developed eating problems. So they all come from a factual story. There's Amelia and Camellia. I had a friend who very fit, always running races, that sort of thing, sporting. And she had a fall and became in a wheelchair. And she used to say to me, I wish people wouldn't feel sorry for me all the time. It's my legs. I'm used to it. So, and that's why I wrote the book, Amelia and Camellia, because in the book, Amelia, Camellia is her wheelchair. She named her wheelchair Camellia because it was a part of her. And in the book, I describe how Camellia doesn't like people feeling sorry for her. It's her legs now, and then she's got a crab that puts a motor on it so she can still go swimming. And then Gazza, the great white shark, comes up and plays. And and it just shows the children that, okay, she's in a wheelchair. It doesn't mean she can't do a lot of things that you can do. So, they're all based on stories I've heard.
Now, how is this, as you're working with children and writing these books, how is our COVID pandemic virus, how is that affecting these children and families, at least in Australia? What do you see? Is there a difference? Or
in the beginning, it was really hard because children were kept at home. For the frontline workers, I was still working because I was classed as a frontline worker for frontline workers, but very minimum children. But they were confused because all of a sudden people are in masks, everything's shut down. They couldn't have birthday parties. It was very limited what I could do in the way of activities with them. Outdoor games, it was like they were so used to playing tip, and then all of a sudden I'd go in and say, you're not allowed to touch each other. And it was like, what are you talking about? So it was very hard for them to understand that. I think now they're getting more and more used to it, but it is still very hard,
Yes. And so are they back in school in Australia?
Yes. We were very lucky. When it first happened, we had the massive lockdown, and but now they're all back at school. So when there is a case, I think we had about 2 cases in New South Wales a few weeks ago. But all they say that we have to do, the adults, is wear masks. The parents can't come into the school to pick up their children. We have to take them out to the parent and that type of thing. So, yeah.
Wow. And so was there a difference in compassion and less bullying or more bullying when the children came back off of a lockdown with so much confusion and chaos? Was there a switch there in one direction or another?
They were really happy. They would come in and they would hug each other because they missed that companionship. And and they would come in and the children would hug each other because they hadn't seen each other for so long. They were a little bit, some would say, oh, it was my birthday, but I'm not allowed to have a party until, whenever, and that type of thing. But I think, yes, there was a lot more compassion for each other.
Nice. So that's a big gift then, maybe, in all this, is that we learn what matters most. And our children learn more compassion because, look, anything can happen to anyone. Nobody asked for this pandemic, for sure. And nobody has control over how it's going to play out in each country. And yet we have to do whatever we need to do. And I think it's similar to, we don't have control if you have a disability or something goes on in your life as a child. And it's confusing. Like you said, the children were confused at first. I think most adults were confused at first. I know I was. I was like, what the heck just happened to my life? And so you have to adjust. And it's really beautiful that you have these books available to speak to the realities of being a child. It's not a pretend, like everything's a fairy tale and it's all living happily ever after. It's real issues that have to be dealt with, yet in a child's understanding, so that they can really relate to it in a fun way, and it's not so deep, but they get the point, and that's important right now.
That's right, because children will hang on to a word or something, because what I do is I do storytelling, and I have the characters dressed up and that sort of thing for the children, and then do some face painting, and then they can make a character from the book. But they do learn in that way, because somebody might do something and they'll say, oh, Amelia doesn't do that because that's unkind or something. So they learn as you say, in a really fun, interactive way of what is right and what is wrong because of the Australian animal that I've used. Yeah.
Yes, that's so important. And if you have children and you're listening in, or grandchildren, this is a great way to maybe donate a book. If you don't have any, call the library where you live and ask to get a copy in stock so that people can get a copy or read this book to their children or grandchildren. I think that can really make a difference, and it's so important. I believe our libraries are mostly opened, or you're able to get things delivered by mail now for those that want to get a book. So that's really important. And do you have any tips for parents that maybe they have a child that, like in the United States where we are, we're barely getting our kids back to school. Some states are talking about it still. And so it's really tough. Do you have any tips for parents that are preparing their children to go back to school, yet it's going to be so different with the masks, and they have plexiglass and so many new rules and all that, to prepare them?
Yes, I think, well, I think the kids are going to be so excited to be back as well. But I think, just talking to them, preparing them for the changes when they get back to school. I mean, we did that with ours when I used to have them in care, and I would say when school reopens and everyone's allowed back in, we've still got to remember to constantly sanitize and that type of thing. We still can't hug each other, which comes natural, and then when you're told you're not allowed to. But we reassure them that it's only for a short term. Once the virus is gone, we can go back to our normal lives. Of course, we'll still be sanitizing. I think that's in with us forever. Hopefully the masks aren't.
No. Yes, I've never cleaned so much in my life. I'm like, I've got to clean the grocery bags and clean all this. When it first happened and they had all these worries, I was like, you've got to be kidding. How much cleaning? And now we understand a little bit more about it, but it was just funny. My daughter and I would laugh. My one in college and home, because the college closed and the dorm closed. And I have, as a parent, embraced having my children that could be home, even though most of them are grown. I loved this time. Have this bonus year, this extra time with your family to instill your values, maybe to redirect or to give them strength if they have in the past had some problems with bullying, to read great books like this and talk about things, and maybe do some play acting and practicing how to react differently to avoid this bullying, because it's such a problem. And these things can make a big difference.
And I think there is a lot of, children watch adults as well. So, and there's road rage and that type of thing, and children see all that. So they think, oh, that's normal. And it's not. So I think, some adults need to watch their behaviours around children as well. Like my case of workplace bullying, I mean, they just thought my life was a joke to me, and it was their entertainment. And I don't think they've realised what they did actually made me lose everything I owned, and the path it put me on. And it was only through inner strength that I built myself back up again.
Right.
So
that's another important thing to kind of talk about is, if you're listening in and you are going through a situation where you're going to work and there's bullying at work, there's a boss that's maybe a narcissist or whatever's going on. Maybe you have a coworker that just does really mean, crazy things. And if you're dealing with a situation like that, I would say start looking for another job as soon as possible, where you can get out and move forward. Sometimes it's not the industry, it's just that particular group. So you bring your positive energy with you. And it's like, think about when you go into a room and somebody walks in and they're positive, it's like, oh, I feel their beautiful energy. Somebody else comes in with the negative stuff, they might not even say anything, and you could feel it. And it changes, everybody else that works there is like, oh, no, that person's in today, or the boss that's not nice is here, that whatever. And I know that I will tell you, in my lifetime, I have mostly been an entrepreneur. I've had my own stores and this and that, but there were some times when I was very young that I worked. First, I worked for the government programming and computers. Then I did some private union jobs. And I know the few times that I've had bosses that were off, that were way out of line, I literally got another job and left as soon as I could. And I remember the one, I can't say the company, but that boss actually, they ended up proving it, and he was doing, it was sexual harassment to all the women. And so blatant. And I was like, I'm sorry, but that doesn't work for me. I got to go. You know, like, that's not going to fly here with me. And it was that thing about knowing that when you really say, hey, I'm going to work with and surround myself with people that are aligned with my core values, life purpose, and vision. And yes, this is a tough year, and you might have to stick it out and stay to, you know, you got to put food on the table. But I would start applying, and it's a numbers game. If you have the talent and the capability, and you keep applying, and then go volunteer, either by phone or in person, whatever you can do, volunteer with something you really care about, that you can share your talents, because a lot of times they'll hire you when they see you show up, and it'll be a group that's aligned. And get out of, it's like an abusive home. It's an abusive workplace. And it's not something that anybody needs right now or ever. So, yeah, so I'm glad that in a way it was almost like a blessing, because you were pushed out of one thing to help so many young people. And that is such a gift that you are giving back to the world now. And you didn't write before, and here you are sharing your truth. So I think that's the gift in this time, is that we're able to actually pursue things that maybe we didn't have time for or didn't think about before. And now we can go do that. And when we're doing our talent, it's like there's not a lot of effort required. I see you light up. You're talking about the characters and the story and the children, and your heart is open, and your love is coming through. You know what I mean? And that when you're doing that, there's like no competition, and you're just, because you're on your purpose. And
I feel that.
Each of us, each child has that, and adult has that. And as long as we're doing that, I believe, and we're giving back, blessings show up. It's like a law, some kind of universal law.
I truly believe that.
Yes, I do too. And so that is wonderful. Could you share now, we're coming to the end of our talking time, could you share maybe the links or ways that people can get your books and the names one more time?
Yes. If they go to, I think it's Booktopia, and type in Beyond a Joke series, or type in Kate Pennington, then the link will come up, and they can purchase the books from there. And or if they wanted to write to me at kfpennington@optusnet.com.au, if anyone has a child that just wants a little miniature personalised story, if their child's being bullied and they're depressed or something, I'll put something together, and it'll be from the Australian animals back to their child. So that's a little community free service I do. And the children, I have sent some to some of the kids in America, actually. And they love it. So
that's wonderful.
So
All right. Well, thank you again for being on the show, Kate. And I look forward to getting your books to more people here in the United States.
Thank you so much, Sheila.
Appreciate your time as well. All right. Thank you. And stay tuned. We'll be back after these messages.
Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you. If you are just tuning in, this is the Sheila Mack Show. And today we had special guest and author Kate Pennington. She has Beyond A Joke Publishing, where she speaks of real issues that children face every day, a lot to do with how to get through and over bullying, not to tease, so many books. I have a few here. And if you go to booktopia.com.au, you can find all of her books published for children, a great way to talk about important topics in a safe way. All right, enjoy. And again, you can get Kate's children's books. They're all by Beyond A Joke Publishing at www.booktopia.com.au. Thanks again for tuning in. If you are just tuning in, this is the Sheila Mack Show on NBC's KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. And today, I'd like to share with you a chapter in my new best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. So take a listen. Chapter 7. You'll Always Be My Baby, Parenting Teenage and Adult Children. My daughter and youngest son are only a year and a half apart, so they grew up together. They are best friends and support each other in everything, even getting into trouble together. For her last 2 years of high school, my daughter and son wanted to go to a charter school I had campaigned for and helped open. The school focused on what she and her brother wanted to do for their careers. My daughter had already decided that she would study psychology. She was a straight A student with above a 4.0 grade point average and a great track record. Although my son was not as decided on his major, the school and area seemed to be a great fit. So after my ex and I got divorced, we packed up our belongings and moved to a new city for a fresh start. Whether because of starting that new school and being around different kids, stress about the move and family reorganization, peer pressure, or just teenagers making bad decisions, both of my kids got caught smoking marijuana. Worse, my daughter was driving under the influence of marijuana when they were pulled over, so a police report was filed too. Getting that phone call was my parenting rock bottom. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't believe in using mind-altering substances. I'm aware that these things go on, but I would prefer my kids talk to me about it and not get into a car, because that's dangerous. They could have killed someone else or themselves. We called a family meeting, something we had done since the children were little. We went around the table and each of us had a chance to share our feelings and give input to the situation. My daughter went first, as the driver, and then my son. I asked for their side of the story. I went last and shared how scary it was as a mom to receive a call from the police. Then I said, "You have a choice. I will pay for you to go to boarding school, and it will be a strict school because I will not have you staying in this environment. You're not making good choices, and you need more supervision than I thought. Or you can go on the Tony Robbins tour with me, traveling around the country to attend motivational seminars." My daughter said, "Mom, you can't afford that." "You know what?" I replied. "I can't afford to bury you." The kids chose to go on the tour, and that decision changed my children's entire future. Pushing the boundaries. I don't care how perfect you are or think you are. As a parent, kids at a certain phase are going to test the boundaries. When my children got in trouble, I chose to do everything I could while it was a relatively small infraction, before they did anything bigger that could risk their health, well-being, and lives. Most of the time, choices have a natural consequence in life, and those consequences will teach a lesson. It's a learning experience while the consequences are still small. They didn't crash a car, get into hard drugs, go bankrupt, or anything else that would make their lives a lot more difficult later. It's better to have those small consequences earlier, which may still hurt, but which will lead to personal responsibility versus the later consequences that can be really serious and sad. Life is a strict teacher. It says, if you do that, this is what's going to happen, and it's going to hurt. As a parent, you don't have to scold. You can just say, I hope you don't do that because I don't want to see you get hurt. Of course, not everybody can quit their job and travel the world. I was fortunate to have a business I could run while traveling. But every parent can be present for their children as much as they are able to, while helping those children, no matter how old they are, learn to see the different options they have. When children are younger, they need a lot of boundaries. Teenagers and young adults push those boundaries so that they become independent adults. They can start setting boundaries of their own. A normal, healthy part of the teenage to adult transition is for them to push back and say, I want space. I want to be on my own a little more. I want to make my own decisions. There's a dance of give and take that has to happen. As a parent, you're starting to let go. You're figuring out where those boundaries are. The level of responsibility young adults have shifts, and every month, every year, it accelerates. I was painfully aware of that once my children turned 18. I couldn't make them do anything. They were going to choose what to do on their own. The best thing I could do, the best thing any parent can do, is to set them up to make decisions that give them the best possible outcomes in life, and then let them go. But be there to catch them when they fall now and then. Parenting has a natural goal of making sure your children grow up to become productive members of society who fulfill their own talents and goals, even if that looks completely different from what you pictured for your kid. They deserve the freedom to try. Maybe that looks like not going to university right away after graduating from high school. Maybe they're going to go to community college and test out different fields to see what fits best. We have to let them figure it out so they can find their own path. We can't control how happy they're going to be in life, how successful they'll be, or what kind of life they want to live. All we can do is model our best version of happiness, of success, and of living life, and let them know that we'll always be there for them. We'll always love them. Parenting teenagers. When my youngest son was a teenager, I learned to never tell him not to do something. The minute I did, he would go do it, and he'd do it twice as much as he ever would have if I hadn't told him not to do it in the first place. My daughter, on the other hand, would respect those boundaries and have very adult conversations with me about what was going on and why I was asking her not to do something. Every child is different, even within the same family, and each may require a different parenting style or approach. If you treat them all the same, you may miss opportunities to nurture the unique talents that make them different. When you learn to understand and appreciate their differences, however, your children grow into independent teenagers and adults. Here are some tips for parenting teenagers that I picked up while raising 6 of my own. Step 1. Learn your teenager's temperament. Start by learning what your teenager's temperament is. It may be different from when they were a child, but one of the easiest ways to figure this out is to think back to those magical preschool days. My first son was always interested in figuring out how his toys worked. He would break them into pieces just to see if he could put them back together again. He later became a programmer and chess player. His temperament requires contemplation. He thinks in mathematical equations, and small talk was never his thing. So to reach him, it was always best to present things using logic and science instead of feelings and emotions. Another one of my sons has a very different temperament. He loves to be around people. I always referred to him as my hugger, and he was born laughing. He has always had a very low-key, laid-back personality. He's never liked to be rushed, and as a kid, he complained when I put him in too many after-school activities. He just wanted to go play at the park and have fun. He also has a photographic memory and is very smart. When he chooses to apply himself in anything, he gets the job done, and nothing can stop him. I've learned that with his temperament, He's happiest choosing how he wants to best apply or not apply his talents. My daughter is amazing and always organized, which she doesn't get from me. She has always naturally loved structure, and if you give her a calendar or a list of things to do, she's happy. To this day, she loves order and creates her work and school schedule to ensure she is reaching her desired outcomes. When she was a young child or teen, I would write out a list and we would discuss goals together. As long as it made sense and she agreed with the schedule, she got everything accomplished. You can also check your teenager's love language, as we covered in Chapter 3 on relationships, or use other individualized assessments. This will teach you how to express yourself as a parent so you can actually reach them, and it will show you how to talk to them and how to hear what they're saying. Step 2. Determine how your teen responds to the world. After you understand her temperament, determine how your child responds to the world. Although this section speaks of dealing with a teen, it relates to older and younger children's personalities as well. During the teen years, a child is going through a lot of transitions, both physically with hormones as well as emotionally. They are experiencing the growing pains of first loves and learning how to fit in with peers in school, the pressures of school and getting good grades, and the reality of preparing to leave home to go off to college or start a career. It's a scary time of rapid growth as a child begins to develop their identity and autonomy. With that being said, how your child reacted when younger is going to be very different during these teen years. How does your child respond when they are happy, when overwhelmed, when things don't go right, and they get bad news or are dealing with drama at school? Your teenager may act out or respond with anger or seclude themselves in their room. The question to be aware of is, at what point is their response something to be concerned about? If you start to feel uncertain about where your child is headed, it may be helpful to have a pre-discussion about consequences. Creating a family meeting, even at this stage and age, can make a huge difference. It may even be necessary to help them reboot, which we'll talk about in just a moment in Step 4. Step 3. Discover how your teenager learns best. Third, discover how they learn best. We all learn differently. Some people do well listening in class and can remember just about everything they hear. Others have verbal processing issues and need to read to get their best results. There are those who are often seen taking voracious notes. They tend to be more kinesthetic in nature, and the feeling of the act of writing itself helps their minds remember more about the topic. Some must repeat or verbally speak something to memorize it deeply. Because I was both a Montessori and Waldorf teacher over the years, I got to study how to reach children using many different modalities. It helped me to understand how to reach my own teens better, as well as how to learn and continue to educate myself. When you determine the strongest way to support your teenagers' learning, you can be sure that what you're saying or writing sticks. Step 4. Teach your children the Boots formula. The last step is to teach your children the Boots formula so they can use it through their own inevitable ups and downs. Having smaller rock-bottom moments when they're younger helps your children learn to move through them and hopefully helps prevent hitting too many more rock bottoms as they grow into adulthood. When you share some of the small steps you take while going through a tough situation or even a rock bottom, you are teaching your children to be prepared and successful adults. We all have our waves in life, and the best thing we can do as parents is give our children the tools to be able to handle any situation that may show up. Ask your child who they are being during their struggles at school or elsewhere, and how they need to show up in order to modify the situation. Help them assess their orientation. Where are they with their homework assignments, for example, and where do they need to be to get the grades they want? Help them to think through the order of operations, a nice way to introduce a higher math concept early on. What would be the best first step to take? Once they've taken that first action, what is the next logical step? Then remind your teen about how their thinking can help them with their life. What mindset will best help them in this situation? Finally, help them to learn how to set goals and step up and take action toward their own desired outcomes. It may be that they want to have friends over for a party. Together, you could write out a few steps and make an agreement that if they do these action steps, you'll let them have their party. I have a different relationship with each of my children because I know what their temperament is. I know how they respond. I know how they learn. And I know they have the tools they need to think and plan through difficult life situations. Where one may have needed more space as a teenager, another needed firmer boundaries, and yet another needed additional guidance because they were still an immature young adult. With these steps established, you and your teenagers will have better communication. When they have an issue, they will be less likely to hide it. They can come to you before it gets really bad. They'll feel safe in your relationship, so they can tell you the shift that's happening in their life before they hit rock bottom. Then you can talk through it. Help them reboot if necessary, and they'll be a lot more open to your parenting. Know them and know their friends. One of the most important things Tony Robbins says is, we're the direct reflection of our peer group. If we see our kids get into the wrong peer group, the best thing to do is make some kind of a shift. That may mean moving, sending them to a different school, or having them go to a summer program. Maybe you can't afford to move or pay for pricey summer camps. That's okay. It just needs to be enough of a shift to shake up their perspective. Connect them with Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, community service, or an after-school activity they love, maybe a dance class, sports team, or arts program. It may mean getting them involved in some different classes to occupy their time and connect them with a more solid group. That way, your teenager is connecting with kids who are actually doing things your child wants to do anyway. It's not taking them out of their social life, but taking them out of a group that may be going down the wrong road. Then they can see that they don't have to do what everybody else is doing, which may be the wrong choice. Instead, the people around them will be applying themselves and working toward finding their talents. As important as a peer group is for a teen, or even for adults, it all boils down to personal responsibility. The moment a teen or parent stops blaming the others and focuses on new solutions is the moment a person is truly free. It seems hard to do, yet as a parent, modeling this type of responsibility can actually be the best training tool. If you have a teen at home, it may be helpful to point out your own teen or young adult experience. You may want to share how, when you were a young adult, once you were able to own your role in the situation, the problems disappeared and the solutions appeared. Once a teen applies this concept, it is so empowering, and they can use it as a tool for future difficult situations in college or in the business world. Parenting adult children. My children are all legally adults now, but I am always going to be their mom, and sometimes I still want to parent them. As we've discussed, there's a transition from child to teen, teen to young adult, and from young adult to fully fledged adult. Your relationship with your children will reinvent itself over the years. The responsibility shifts, the dialogue changes, you talk about things more openly or create stronger boundaries around the subjects you don't want to talk about. You're still a parent, but you shift to an advisor or friend role, someone they can come to and confide in about what's going on in their lives. You become a guide instead of someone who tells them what to do. You're not going to agree with everything your adult children do, and that's okay. Not everybody agrees with what I do. We all have our own decisions to make, but what if they keep making what you consider stupid choices, even as adults? Sometimes you just have to have the attitude of, I'm not going to say anything. I don't agree with this particular decision, but I love this person. Or even acknowledge, I don't agree with this, but if you're going to do it anyway, that's your choice. You agree to disagree. You choose your battles. But sometimes a boundary is crossed, and you as a family have to decide how to deal with that in the most loving way possible. You'll always love your children, but they don't live under your roof. So you can decide how you want them in your life. This may sound harsh, but it's real, and your grown children will appreciate receiving honesty with love over having to lie to your face about how they are living their lives. Some families choose not to discuss certain things openly, and others share just about everything. Each family unit has to decide on their own limits. I've heard of parents disowning their grown children over who they choose to date, or something as simple as a young adult changing their hair color or getting a piercing or tattoo. While that may not have been a parent's goal or ideal for their child, if you think back to your own teen or young adult years, there were always ways of expressing yourself, and those generational expressions change over time. Don't throw your adult baby out with the bathwater of the times. They are now adults and may decide to make changes later. Most will settle into their own less extremes once they test the boundaries and limits and are ready to settle down and get serious about careers or starting their own families. As much as possible, see where you can meet in the middle as adults. You're going to love your children no matter what, and you'll like the good parts about them. You don't have to like the parts that don't align with your values or your vision for them. That's their life. They own it now. A safe space. Just like with teenagers, if you honor who your adult children are and who they're showing up as, even though you might not agree with a large portion of what they're doing at the moment, it makes you a safe place for them to come to. But if you treat an adult like a child, you are most likely to be met with dishonesty, distance, pushback, and resentment. If every time you get together, you go in circles about a lifestyle choice because you don't like their job or boyfriend or girlfriend, they're not going to want to come over and visit or share real things with you. Is it worth doing that to your relationship? Don't waste your constantly shrinking precious time on things you can't change. How many people on this planet have to go home to their family on Thanksgiving or Christmas and think, ugh, this is hell. I don't want to go because these people are going to throw all their opinions on me, and I don't want to hear any of it. The holidays become a painful obligation. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be a painful obligation. Instead, try to focus on all the good, the things you align on, the moments spent laughing and having fun, talking about your shared history, and making new memories. Do whatever makes you all happy this year, during this season of your life. It doesn't have to be what you've always done, where everybody gets the hell out as fast as they can because they don't want to be there. For example, as a family, we decided to celebrate our holidays differently. We have our own traditions, and my kids bring their significant others and children into the mix. One year, after spending a small fortune and 3 long days preparing the Thanksgiving meal and doing all the decorations, while running a business and taking care of elder family members, everybody showed up having already eaten 1 or 2 meals at other houses they'd had to stop by on the way to my house. They were too stuffed to eat all the food I had so carefully cooked. That day, I announced that for future Thanksgivings, I was going to gift myself a trip to a wellness spa for a few days over the course of my birthday. I would rather spend that time and money on wellness, and we could plan to do a healthy, fun family activity that focused less on food and more on connection. One time we toured Catalina Island. Another time we rented bikes and rode them on Venice Beach. Sometimes we have a slumber party at my house with pillow fights, like when they were kids. Now my adult children come over and visit because they actually want to. As an adult with adult children, I get to be a kid again and play with them and have fun. We're building magic memories, and that's what they're going to remember for the rest of their lives. Strike a balance. No matter how old your children are, it's important to strike a balance in how much help you give them. As young children, we all need a lot of help figuring out the world around us. As we get older, we need less help learning to walk and talk, read and write, ride our bikes, or throw a ball, and more help navigating the complicated world of adults. Whether your children are teenagers or adults, it's necessary to adjust your level of involvement in order to maintain that balance. Don't overhelp. When you overhelp, giving your children too much and not asking that they take any personal responsibility, they may start to believe that they can't do anything for themselves. They've never had to prove themselves and use their talents to produce something. They haven't had to become a functioning adult. When I was a teacher, there were always those parents who did their children's class projects for them. It was pretty clear when the 8-year-old walked in with a working rocket ship model that he didn't make it himself. But the kid who came in with this funny-looking project that they put their heart and soul into deserved an A because I could see they did it themselves. There's a treatment program called Failure to Launch for adult children who have never left home. For whatever reason, they are unable to gain the independence they need to live their own lives. These parents pay thousands of dollars to get their child the help they need in order to grow up. That's a lot of money. It's far more affordable to do something that makes a bigger difference when they're younger. As you watch your child and think, damn, that's not what I'd do, there's this inclination to say, let me help you. But if you're able to step back and give them space while still saying, I'm your parent and I'm always here for you, if you need something, I'm going to show up. If something happens, you've always got a place. But I want you to fly. I want you to make those choices. It helps them develop confidence. A young adult grows by figuring out how to get a job, make their own money, and have some responsibilities. You'll have a much healthier, happier kid that way than if you give them everything and they never get to learn the responsibility of becoming an adult. After she came back from the Tony Robbins tour, my daughter got a job managing a Starbucks while she went to school. One day she came over and said, "See that red car over there? I bought it." She was so proud, and I'm proud of her too. She makes the payments and takes care of the maintenance on the car. She's able to appreciate the car more than she would have if I had bought it for her. And it's beautiful to see the self-confidence that came from figuring it out herself. But don't underhelp either. Over time, you and your children will get to a really solid place where they start having more self-respect and self-confidence, and you can step back from helping more and more. But you don't want to step back too far. You don't want to underhelp. You want to be there as a safety net to a certain extent. Your children should know that if they get sick or have an emergency, they have their parents to turn to for support. You're letting go of the apron strings with lots of love and logic. This concept works like the honor system. You give them a little bit of freedom, and if they step too far and fall, you're going to pull back. For example, if you leave them home alone and they have a party, your child is going to have to re-earn your trust, and they certainly won't be able to stay home alone again for a while. You know your unique individual child and what they can handle better than anyone, but you'll need to have open and honest conversations with them as well. Ask them, how much do you think you can handle? And then trust your gut. It's better to give freedoms a little bit at a time and let your child earn the next step, so you may want to suggest a trial basis for so many weeks or months before going on. You can always pull back if necessary and eventually let them earn it again. Ask your child, what are you showing me? That you can be responsible or can't? Having an honest, open discussion will help this young adult be more receptive than talking down to them.
Here it is, my latest book. I have to let you know something, just between you and me. This book is not one size fits all, just like a pair of boots or a bra. So the formula is designed to help you through any situation.
Up for you to grab a copy of my new best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. It is now available on Audible as well as on Amazon and Kindle and at www.sheilamac.com.